think we're live.
Welcome. Hello, and welcome to another Maps API Hangout.
Yep. So today we'll be doing some interview with Jason Sanford, who you can see down in the bottom, down there. So a quick introduction. I'm Chris. I work on the Google Maps API Developer Relations team.
And I'm Luke. I also work on the Maps API team down here in Sydney.
And, Jason, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a web developer at MapMyFitness. So we've been using the Google Maps API for quite a few years now, so a pretty big customer, I think. So been doing lots of fun stuff lately, converting some apps over from V2 to V3. So we'll chat about that a bit today.
Cool. So, Jason, let's just get a bit of background on what you've been working on. So could you give us a little bit of history, what you're interested in, sort of your background? Do you have a GIS background?
Right, so I've been in the geo business for maybe 6, 7, 8 years now. Worked in local government for a while. Then went over to work in the private sector at Ubisense, doing some real-time location work as well as building web mapping applications for a lot of electric utilities using Google Maps API, as well as lots of other crazy tools. So that was a lot of fun, and just a few months ago I joined the MapMyFitness team. I've been helping out with our new route engine, which uses the Google Maps API extensively. So that's been a fun project. But to be completely honest, I've only done a very small percentage of the work with this route engine. I've jumped in a few places where I was needed, but I've got a coworker that's done a lot more of the work. But I know a lot of what's happening, but not much of the credit goes to me for this. So
Cool. So can you, I mean, you've only been there for a few months, but can you maybe give some insight on why they chose to use the Google Maps API?
So the Maps API for us is pretty important. So a lot of the reason we use it is because of the directions. So it's much easier to map a route from here to 10 miles away if you can just click 2 points instead of clicking 20, 30 points along the way. So you can click a point at your start, click a point at your destination, and then manipulate the route along the way as you see fit. But usually with the directions service, you generally get the route you want on the first try, which is huge. It's a big time saver for our users. Street View is also a pretty big enhancement, but mostly for the directions and the pretty good quality maps.
Cool. Yeah, I was checking out your new routing stuff. It's pretty slick, nicely customized as well. Although I didn't see where you guys are using Street View. Can you talk about that?
You know, we haven't used it much. I guess we're essentially just using this standard Street View control that comes with the Maps API. So the pegman drag and drop on the map, just the standard use there. So coming from V2, I'm not sure if we have that ability or not.
Yeah, that'd be some nice. So you talked a bit about going from V2 to V3. Do you want to just tell us about that experience? Was that an enjoyable one?
Yes and no. So it is great. The API is much better. It's very well organized. But you know, our tools are pretty, I don't want to say complex, but they're not just these one-off things we're doing. I mean, they're fairly complex things on the back end. So my coworker Matt, who is responsible for building most of this, he's spent a good while working on it. And it was kind of a necessary thing to do since V2 is out soon. I'm not sure how soon, but the clock was ticking, so it was time to make the leap.
Yeah, so I think
it's very ticking.
Yeah, I think so. There's a 3-year deprecation policy, and I think that 3 years is up in May next year. So
right.
So if you haven't started moving across, you really ought to now.
Right. So that was a pretty big project. But it's been good. It's been well worth it. So we released our site today with some pretty good reviews so far. So people are excited.
Awesome.
Yeah, I saw there was a bit of buzz going around.
Yeah.
It's great.
A little bit. Enough buzz to make us sweat for a few hours, but it was good.
A great problem to have.
Right.
Until your server catches on fire.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So, do you want to give a bit of a demo of the? So you've ported the existing map from V2 to V3, but you've also released this new routing engine that has additional features. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we're using lots of cool new things like the bicycle layer and using cycling directions and adding a few other custom layers that you guys have released recently. So yeah, I can give a demo. That works.
Cool.
It's my first hangout here, so I'm not sure exactly how to switch screens.
So I think if you go in the top left, there's a screen share button.
Gotcha. Okay. And I pick desktop or Google Hangouts. Let's choose this.
Oh,
So how's that? You see yourself?
Inception.
yeah, very Inception-like.
Right. And so now you see our homepage, hopefully?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of the whole redesign of the site. Not really here to talk about that, but we've changed lots of things. And while we switched this, we figured it was time to release our new route engine, which we've got here. So the first thing you see is that we customize the map based on what site you're at. So MapMyFitness has a number of websites. MapMyRide, as you can see, I'm at here. So on this site, we turn the bicycle layers on by default. You can turn those off if you want. And if you visit any of the other sites like MapMyWalk or MapMyHike, MapMyTry, all of our other websites, those are turned off because a lot of people just aren't interested in those. So we'll turn them back on here. And so you can see it defaulted to my location where I'm at now. So if I wanted to start mapping a route, I could just click right there, and I could just start clicking my way around to figure out where I wanted to go or where I did go. But I'll undo those changes because one of the great things we can do is just have your start location and then come up here to the search bar and just type in any address. So this was a park I went to the other day.
So is that the elevation API down there?
Yeah, so that's the elevation API as well.
Cool.
I'll show you that in just a second. So my second point is that park that I just clicked on. So now we can just kind of see our whole route that we generated. As you can see here, it jumped quite a ways over to this nice bike path, which is pretty handy. You wouldn't want to go up any of these other semi-major roads if you've got these nice bike paths over here. But what you might want to do also is just take this route and drag it over to a slightly different bike path. So we're using Google's draggable directions for that. And we can add any points along here and drag them wherever we see fit. So you notice at the bottom, the elevation should be updating as the route is updated. So as you mouse over the route, well, the elevation, you'll see that location on the route and get a very specific elevation in the chart down there.
It's nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we can hide.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead.
Oh, so what are you guys using for the chart down below?
HiCharts, which is a paid but very affordable JavaScript charting API. So it uses SVG, unless you're an IE, and then it does that crazy VML stuff. But yeah, it's worked really well. I see it a lot around the internet. So as I've implemented this, I've looked around and lots of people are using that, so it's pretty powerful. So maybe you've mapped that route and you want to come back to where you started. We've got this handy double back button that will just kind of take you out to where you were and then all the way back, and then you get your total mileage set to 13.74 miles, and you're back at your start here. So, and then from there you could save your route. It also saves these directions that you could change and just say whatever, and that'll change that Q note. So if you wanted to print these directions, your custom notes here would print out as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's a nice little touch.
Could I go and send these directions off to my like my Garmin device or something like that?
So we do allow export of GPX. I don't think those. I'm almost positive those directions are not included in that. So something sort of like that we do is, if you say you are going to do this workout, you can check send to phone here, and if you're logged in and you have our app on your phone, it will send that route to your phone and draw it on the map so you can follow it as you're riding or running or whatever.
Can you also share the route with friends?
Right, yeah, so you can make this route public, and so anybody with the link can see it, or you can have your MapMyRide or MapMyRun friends see it. But what most people typically do is make it completely public and then post it to Facebook or Twitter or whatever social network they're into. But yeah, you can definitely send this to whoever.
So what were some of the biggest challenges you think you ran into when you're building this?
One of the bigger challenges was today. So we released this, and we love these bicycle directions. What we didn't realize until we released it today is that the bicycle directions may not be available outside of the U.S. So that was a lot of our fault. We didn't do apparently enough debugging in other areas. So that's something we can work around for sure. Most of the difficulties were not really Maps API related, but your typical web development problems, working around different browser bugs and whatnot. So yeah.
The joys of being a web developer.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we do a lot of work to ensure that the Maps API works on many different browsers. We've got a lot of automated testing, so we have all of our tests running continuously on many different browsers,
and
including
devices.
mobile browsers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive to see a wall of phones all running tests.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. So yeah, that's pretty much my demo that I was able to pull together in 2 or 3 minutes. There's lots of other cool things you can do. We show these distance markers here. You can enable and disable those and change the interval you show those on. Turn the bicycle paths off. We've implemented the weather layer. So if you want to see how the weather's going to be if you're about to run out the door and go for a ride or a run, you can see that maybe there's this storm coming. You shouldn't go right now. So yeah, having lots of fun with the Maps API.
Cool.
Yeah.
Especially because you can put cloud cover on and stuff now. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
I thought we had traffic here. Maybe I just don't see it. But anyway.
So what else could you do? Do you guys use styled maps at all?
We don't. We've thought about that. Just to maybe cater them to each of our sites. So each of our sites has a sort of specific style, mostly just color-based. A lot of our runners...
Yeah, you could do this also if it's running, pop up some other parts and get rid of roads.
Yeah.
That they're not going to be used.
I mean, bicycling, you're done with the bicycling layer, but maybe for walking you can expose some of the paths through parks or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea. We hadn't thought about that. So yeah, lots to do there. So this is really just our first iteration. We've gotten lots of good feedback. Lots of things to change maybe, but it's been a lot of fun.
Kind of what we like to hear.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
So, yeah, no worries.
Cool. So, I mean, outside of MapMyFitness, have you got anything else you've been working on? I saw you had was it a vector layer for the Maps API a while ago?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So, I'm not sure if I'm still screen sharing or not, but
you are.
Yeah, you are.
So this is essentially just a library that lets you add lots of other vendor-based web GIS stuff on top of Google Maps. So if you're an ArcGIS server user or a CartoDB user, ArcGIS, lots of other providers. We've got a few others planned as well. So it just lets you easily add in these layers from an ArcGIS server, just throw them right on top of Google Maps with some semi-customizable info windows. I guess this one down here uses, oh, that's not what I wanted. This one here uses the Google Chart APIs. Lets you just do lots of crazy symbology and whatnot. So it's been a few months since I worked on this project, so I don't remember too much about some specifics here, but it was a lot of fun.
How so on the ArcGIS side, did you was there much work there, or because I think there's an existing utility library? Do you use any of that?
No, this was built basically. At my previous job, we had the need to just pull in data from all these different services. Some of it may be live, and some of it may be just like give me all the data in this one service or layer. So this is built on the notion that you could load live data or just some static data, just give it to me and show it. A few of these are like semi-live, so as you pan the map here, you'll get more features. Obviously, you don't want to load every county in the United States in one load, so these only load and they load the individual bounding dots. So as you pan the map, you get more features. So yeah, lots of different options. Lots of decent documentation, I think, for things you can do, like styling the info windows, or styling the actual features, controlling the scale range and whatnot.
Yeah, that documentation looks good, actually. I want to steal that template.
Yeah, it's quite a bootstrap.
It is, yeah.
Is that a JS doc output?
No, I don't like that. I like code and documentation separate, but that's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is the not so recent version of Twitter Bootstrap. It's really good for people like me that aren't super good with design.
Yeah.
Makes everything look beautiful.
It's nice. Yeah. They got a lot of the basics done right. You can just use and go off.
Yep.
I hope it doesn't get too overused. I quite like it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
So so we might go through some news, look at some cool maps that have come out. Have a look at Airbnb and the Made in New York map that that came out recently, and then just go through some Stack Overflow questions. So so let's go through. I'll just start presenting here. So first bit of news.
We have
Google
renamed.
Oh yes, so you go.
Yeah, we've renamed Google Earth Builder now. It's called Google Maps Engine.
Yeah.
So
I'll just pull up the blog post for that.
you should have started with a Google logo.
Yeah. Yeah. Should have organized this.
I spent a while playing with that today.
Okay. Yep. So yeah. So it's just a rename. Oh yeah, and there's also the launch of the Google Maps Engine Grants program. So if you're a non-profit and you want to use what was previously Google Earth Builder, you can now apply for a grant to get access to this new product.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yep. Okay. So what else? Oh yeah. So there's came across this great library last week called OverlappingMarkerSpiderfier.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool.
It's sort of a new way to solve the too many markers problem.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach to clustering.
Yeah.
Which I have spent many a time.
So we mentioned it, I think, 3 times our last hangout, that Luke and I wrote an article on too many markers. So what happens when you have too many markers? How do you solve it? And these guys have re-implemented the sort of spiderification of that you find in Google Earth. So let's just have a quick look at a demo. Okay. So when you click on a marker, a group of markers, they sort of expand and fan out, so you can see each individual one. And it's kind of cool. You a little white line shows you where the marker was precisely on the map, and you can click each individual marker.
So this is an interesting approach where the user doesn't really care about how many markers are there, just that there's a bunch there for some reason. So when you click on them, you can show them all at the same time. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's over on GitHub. OverlappingMarkerSpiderfier.
He would have typed that so many times.
Okay. So what else? You got any show and tell, Luke?
Not really today.
Okay.
Show and all everything. Do you want to show a couple of map of the week?
Yeah. So this week's map is Airbnb. So if you're not following our developer blog, go over and subscribe in your favorite RSS reader. It's googlegeodevelopers.blogspot.com. So this week's map of the week is Airbnb, and these guys just really kick ass at user interface.
Yeah, it's really nice ways of just showing lots of data, and just works really cool.
So let's go and have a look. So I think you can now. Actually, I was on this site the other day
Well,
looking
let's pretend
for.
like we're going on holiday together.
Yeah, where do you want to go?
Let's go to New York.
Okay. Oh wow, my internet's really slow. Okay, where am I going? New York. Cool. Nice autocomplete there. What else? When do we want to go? Let's go tomorrow.
All right. I'm sure our boss will let us
Just
have
two
time
of
off.
us. Yeah. So once we do our search, we can go over here. We can get the list view. Wow, that's pretty cheap. $81 a night.
You better grab that fast.
Yeah. We can go over and look at the map instead. So I was actually looking for a place to stay in New York. And
Not with me?
not with you, I'm sorry, Luke.
Oh.
Yeah, and a map would have been great to... Because apparently I don't want to stay in some parts of New York.
I've heard
Apparently.
that. Apparently.
So, so these guys have solved the too many markers problem as well.
Yeah, so this is similar to the marker cluster where they're just putting a marker with a number that says how many are there, and then as you zoom in, they're basically just re-querying and splitting up that number.
So what happens? So where do I want to stay? I thought I want to stay a bit up here.
Yeah, you should stay in that meat pack area.
Meat packer. All right. Let's. So
Well,
let's.
and the office is over there to the left.
14. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. I was expecting to click on that marker and it shows me. It'd be cool if it did that spartification or zoomed in or something, but it didn't. 230. Okay, that seems expensive.
That's an Australian dollar.
Yeah. But yeah, this is pretty cool. So we've got some sidebar here on the right, so I can filter by price. Maybe I just want to stay. I won't spend any more than $100. Wow, lots of results. And where do I want to stay? I want to stay in Harlem. This is what my friend told me.
All right.
Cool, great.
It'll be a bit of a commute.
And yeah, what do I want? I want a kitchen. Cool. So what happens now? Do I go over?
It'd be cool if they hooked this
Go
up
back
with
to
the
the
Places
list.
API, so you can see kind of what's around.
Yeah, like a walk score kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. So we've got this little map up here on the right. It's pretty cool. Nice. Okay, great. So that's
And do you want to show the
this
other
week's
map of the
map.
week?
Oh, do you have any comments on their site?
I do
On the
not.
review. It's pretty good.
It is pretty good.
Let's go in. I wonder if they have
My
Street
only
View.
comments are the buttons on the top right don't match the buttons on the front page, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, so they got some Street View up here. It's a great idea. So you
See
sort
what
of
it's
explore
like.
the area.
Yeah.
Maryland's famous. Cool. Well, these guys are using a old version of the API.
It doesn't have the pancake.
Yeah, no. So in the Maps API 3.8, we added click to go, which means that same on maps.google.com. If you click anywhere inside the panorama, you'll be zoomed off to that different panorama.
And if you click on the wall, it'll zoom and face the wall.
Yeah. So it looks like these guys are also animating through the panorama to just sort of
Rotate.
give you a look around. One suggestion here would be really cool to just put a marker on where the place actually is. So if you put a marker in Street View, it'll sort of sit in its place and move around as the panorama moves around. Yeah, that's my only suggestion here. But yeah, that's quite nice. Oh, cool. So they might be using the Places API here to just sort of show you what's around.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's nice.
And that's how, they're giving it a rough idea of where it is because they don't want to show you. That's why they're putting a marker on
Oh,
Street View.
right. They don't give
For
you the
privacy
address.
reasons.
Ah,
Smart of them.
okay.
So
I understand. Well, maybe Street View doesn't make so much sense because you don't actually know where it is.
somewhere around here.
Cool. Nice. Okay, what's next? So
The
I
other
think
map of the week.
the other map of the week was
The
Made in New York.
Which was using the marker cluster.
Yeah. So let's take a look at that. So I heard on extremely poor authority that Mayor Bloomberg actually coded this himself.
Well, given how easy the marker cluster is, sure. I quite like the UI. It works quite well with the kind of the startup-y sort of feel. It's pretty nice.
God, this is so slow. Okay,
Wow, there's lots of tech companies in New York hiring.
yeah. Cool. So this is yeah. So they're using the marker cluster, which Luke designed. Actually, the thing I like about this site is that they didn't space the clusters too far apart. They've sort of brought them in together, so they sort of sit next to each other. It sort of
Gives a heat map-ish sort of feel.
yeah. It's sort of a bit more interesting. Sort of shows you makes it look a bit more dynamic. And they're actually using a really nice style of map here. So we'll have a look at that in a sec, but looks like they've simplified the roads, made them white. It just looks really nice. So as we click here, we zoom in and we can see all of these. What are they? Are they? Oh, they're all the hiring companies. Okay.
Yeah, and so you can filter on the right.
So I can filter digital companies.
Yeah.
And then select individual ones. Get this nice
Game
picture on the
changer.
right. Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
So it looks like they're using, what is it?
Fonts API?
Fonts, yeah, Fonts API or CSS3 fonts. Looks nice.
Yeah, well done. Yeah,
It's great.
Solves the problem. It's nicely done. It works well.
Yeah. So let's just let's have a look at a little bit look at the code.
Because that's what you want. You want everyone looking at your code live.
Yeah. So if you just pull up the HTML, we can sort of see how they've structured this. Let's see, some things that they've done well. Maybe give some recommendations. Oh, come on. Okay, we can look through the
JavaScript.
Oh god. Okay, my laptop's dead.
There we go.
Oh, I'm not even up there.
Oh, you're projecting.
Oh yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Cool. So, so the first thing I see is they haven't compiled their JavaScript or minified it. So immediate speed up there.
Just on download time and
yeah, but it's
and
great
also
because we can just have a look through.
Yeah, because if this was all A's and B's, it'd be quite difficult to read. But so you can see the first bit there. They've got their style map.
Yeah. So the great thing about JavaScript and just the web is you can just look through people's code. So I really like this map style, so I can go through their code, have a look at what they've done. So you can see they've made all the roads white. What have they done here? They've sort of lightened the road labels, recolored the water, and turned off transit lines. So
if you like this style, you go and borrow it.
Yeah. So
change it.
Yeah. So they didn't actually use simplified. They just made it all white. Looks good.
And they're using jQuery.
So that doesn't look like map-related stuff. So we've got a fair bit of customization on the map here. Looks great. So the other thing we can see here is they're using one info window for the whole page,
which is brilliant.
Yeah. So as I click on multiple, so I click on them and then go over here and click on another one. We're not opening up multiple info windows. We're just reusing the one info window. Yeah. What else? So yeah, you can see how they're using marker clusterer. So they've got a bit of customization here on the click event.
Yep, so basically when you click here on the marker cluster, they are hiding the info window, hiding their details, and if they're zoomed out too far, they're going to, I can't read the bottom part of that.
If it's zoomed too far out, then they...
And they're populating their list on the right.
Oh, right. Oh, so this is cool. So say we're zoomed, there's two companies that are really, really close to each other, maybe in the same building, and I click on them, it just tells me there's two companies here. So, so this is another great solution to too many markers.
Yeah.
If they're in the exact same position, you could do the spidification, or you could just open the info window and say what's underneath.
Yeah, because the marker cluster has a nice thing where you can listen to click events, so when you click on a cluster, it'll tell you how many markers are actually in that cluster and all the markers that are in there.
Yeah. Cool. So a whole bunch of other stuff. Have a look through if you're interested in it. So let's just take a quick look at their HTML. Looks like they're using
some nice ASCII art at the start.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so they've done a great optimization, which is just putting all the JavaScript at the end of the page, which means it loads after the rest of the content's there. So that's and they're using a Maps API key so they can track their usage. Definitely recommend that if you're using the Maps API.
Mm-hmm.
So they're loading jQuery from the Google Ajax libraries.
And nicely, as if you can see here, is when they're loading up the source tag, they're just doing //, which means if they're on HTTP or HTTPS, it will just use the correct protocol and you won't get mixed content warnings.
Yeah,
it's good practice to be in. One caveat is if you're loading something just off file, file : / it won't work.
Yeah. So loading off the Ajax libraries lets you use Google's content delivery network. So you'll probably get a speed up, and chances are your users will already have jQuery cached.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great.
So those are our maps of the week.
Cool. Yeah. So
Go to some questions.
yeah, let's go to some questions. So we didn't really have any on our Google moderator. I'm a bit sad about that, Dave. So we didn't really have any on our Google moderator. So we're just going to go through some Stack Overflow questions that we thought were interesting or weren't already answered.
And then
just have a look through it.
Those playing at home can go and answer the questions before we get a chance to and get the point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not going to go in and put the answer in.
The answer can be to go watch our Hangout.
Yeah, just post a link to the video. So this first one is how to tell KML layer about your custom map projection. So this is an interesting one. So it looks like he's got a custom map projection for some Russian tiles, and he also uses the default projection, but when he uses KML layer, it doesn't work, obviously, with the custom projection. So unfortunately, KML layer renders the tiles server-side, so if you're using some funky projection, there's not really any way that we can get that over to our server to move the markers around.
You kind of have to convert your stuff to Mercator projection.
Yeah, so either go and try to get tiles that are in Mercator projection, or I think the easiest thing in this case would be to use GeoXML3, which will bring down your KML file, parse it, and go and add markers to the map as regular markers.
Which is fine as long as your KML file is not too big.
Yeah. Either that, or you could probably fake it. If you're only showing a KML layer, you could sort of pretend that do some funky projection. I don't know. It's probably possible, but GeoXML3 is the easy way. Cool. So next one is how to bind an info window as a property of a marker. So we don't really do this very much.
And binding is kind of an overloaded word here because we've got the concept of MVC where you actually do bind. So are they kind of thinking like, I've got a marker and I want to set a property which is a reference to my info window?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Which, I mean, technically you can do that in JavaScript because you can add properties to any object. You want to be careful that you're not using a property that already exists or that we may use one day.
Yep.
So naming the property something like underscore some prefix underscore info window 38 equals my info window, and then when you have a click event on the marker, you can just go this dot underscore info window 38.
Yeah. And
there's your reference.
Yeah. So if you actually want to bind them together, you can bind the map property. But you've got to be careful to unbind that if you ever want to open that info window on a different marker. Otherwise they'll all be bound together, basically.
Yeah. Or you can bind their position together as well if you just want them moving position. So if you've got an info window and you're dragging it, and a marker and you're dragging it, you want the info window to follow.
Yeah. But I see here there's also a similar question. How do I clean up an info window when the associated marker is hidden? I think there's a great answer down here. Maybe not. I mean, this looks pretty. Yeah. This looks pretty similar. So you basically you want to listen to the map changed event on the marker, and then do something based on that. So
yeah, visible change is probably not the right one. Map change is the better option.
Yeah.
Because when you remove a marker, you set map change to be null. And so you could do, it really depends on your use case, but you may do something where, do I have a variable that says the info window is open, and if it is, then hide it.
Yeah.
But this may be tricky when you've got multiple markers and one hides and you're not really sure. So it really depends on your setup and what you're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps if you're using one info window, you could set a property on the info window that points to a marker that was last opened. And then when you're deleting markers, go and check to see if those two are equal. And if they are, then you close the info window, something like that. Yeah. Cool. So, so there's one more here. Oh, actually, we've got two more. So animated lines with arrows between two coordinates. So we actually did something similar to this in one of our slide decks.
Yeah, we had us flying from Sydney to Perth.
Yeah. So if we go over to the documentation, there's some really useful utility functions for spherical geometry. So if you know the 2 points, so if you just go and search for spherical, what you probably want to use is interpolate. So your from lat long is wherever you're going from, your to lat long is wherever you're going to. And then you can call this function as you're animating and keep updating fraction, which is the third parameter. And then that returns a lat long, and you could then use that to update a polyline or move a marker from the from to the to.
Mm-hmm. Or all of them.
Yeah.
And bonus points if you do it in an animation frame.
Yeah.
Then you get nice performance.
Yeah. So in terms of arrows, at the moment we don't have any arrows on polylines, but there's an open feature request for that.
So star that, and we'll let you know if it gets done.
Yeah. You could probably fake it with a little marker as an arrow and move that.
And kind of rotate it in CSS or something if you wanted to try and get the bearing correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, or an overlay view. If someone wants to create an overlay view that just has an arrowhead that can be rotated, that would be pretty cool.
Do that in Canvas as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of cool ways.
Okay, so draw polygon from user-entered vertices. Okay, so he's got some a list of coordinates and just wants to draw them. So the first thing you've got to do is get these coordinates into an array of lat longs, which is the format that we draw. We use to draw polygons. So if you actually have it in a text field like that, you'd probably want to maybe split on commas, and for every second one, you can get the lat long pair out of it.
And then with that array, you can then create new polyline objects.
Polyline, yeah.
And
add it to your map.
And then add that to your map with that array, and you'll get a line.
Yeah. But if you haven't seen it already, you should take a look at the drawing editable polylines, which lets your users go and draw polylines on the map and polygons.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's it.
Okay, I think that's it for us today.
Jason, are you still there? It looks very dark.
Yeah, I turned off for a second.
That's
didn't want to look too sleepy here. It's getting late here.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. Great. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Those who are out there. Jason, thanks very much for coming along.
You're welcome. It was fun. All right. See you guys.
See you later.
See you guys.